there's been there's a lot of talk about agents, agents this, agents that, and it's like, are they really that? Is it that big a deal? And the more I've got into it, the more I'm like, it absolutely is a big deal. Like, I'm blown away by how much you can do with these AI agents. And I'm going to show you today how easy that is to get set up and how easy it is to get started with stuff. And then you'll sort of see the thread to pull on to start working down this path. But these things change the game completely in a way that I hadn't appreciated until really just a short time ago. It was pretty amazing stuff. This group is set up to enable people to collaborate, to learn, to sort of help each other. There's a whole stack of resources available now. Jump onto the productfoundry.ai website. You'll see links to a whole bunch of those, and I'll take you guys through that a little bit later because there's quite a lot to get your head across. But I've done the best to sort of structure it so it's easy to follow, and sort of looking for people to help out with that as well a little bit. But I'll come to that in a second. I want to take you guys through the sort of the main thrust of this talk first of all before we jump into that. This session, I'll skip over this because we're kind of going to just jump straight into it. There is going to be a chunk of time spent looking at actual AI agents in real life sort of situation first, like not massively complex, but also genuinely useful. So we'll look at that, and then we'll jump in and sort of come back and look at some of the theory. So we're going to look at the applications first, and then we'll come back and look at the theory later on, because I think that's going to be more engaging for everyone. We are in this schedule. We're up to the AI agents. Next week, we'll be looking at them in a bit more detail. So if you kind of like the session that you've got here, then jump into the next week's session. The videos from the previous ones are online, and there is a Discord available to reach out for help if you guys want sort of some help. So feel free to reach out. A little bit about me. I've 25 odd years working in this space, PhD in AI. I've got a lot of expertise working on a whole range of stuff across a range of clients. I have currently working on a multi-billion rodent project, AI data lead on that. Previously, I've developed a data platform, which is machine learning and AI based for Siemens that manages all their turbines, and done some work for Nestle, which won some innovation awards. Got a lot of experience in this space, and I'm blown away, absolutely blown away by how fast this world is changing right now. It's just unreal. So these sessions are here to help you guys get up to speed. There's a number of steps to doing that. This session is the session in which hopefully you'll get a chance to sort of see what's there. The trick is to get you from familiarity up to actually conscious action or proficiency in all this. And there's a number of resources that are in place to do that. I'm going to come back to this slide because I want to take you through the process and sort of when we come back and look at the actual resources that are there. But hopefully you'll get to a point where you've heard of the thing. You can do it, follow the instructions. Then you can start to apply that sort of with some efforts and sort of get you to the point where you're here fairly quickly. So that's the goal of getting you to the point where you can actually do this stuff and see what's possible as well. So hopefully by the end of this, in terms of AI agents and model context protocol, you'll have some understanding of what that looks like. Like I said, we'll come back on this in a second because I want to actually jump into this. Now, I'm going to jump around just a little bit here because I want to jump into the actual part, which is the value part for this. And that is talking around what it is that AI agents and model context protocol, or MCP, actually lets you do. So if you go back in time, what you used to do was you'd have all these applications that were running. They would all publish an API, and you would have to go and figure out that API so that you could connect to it, and then you could hook it up to your LLM. But you'd have to do a lot of plumbing at this point in time, and that plumbing takes a lot of time. And everyone's out there doing the same plumbing over and over and over again. So it's kind of inefficient, and it means that this slows you down interfacing to any of these types of technology. What has happened with MCP is that it's come along and it's a protocol in which it allows all these services to talk to MCP. the people, so for example, Google will spend the time creating an interface to the model context protocol, and then the job is done. And at that point in time, you can just hook up your application on this side and connect in to the model context protocol and access all of this work, which is here. So you can imagine there's just a huge amount of resources or applications that are available. And let's just have a quick look here, because this is quite mind-blowing. When you look at the model context protocol for what's available in terms of what's been developed for, all of these things. So you can access all of these types of applications through MCP. And we're going to jump in a second and show you what that actually looks like. But imagine trying to interface to any of these things. You'd be talking about like just a huge amount of work, and suddenly it's all done for you. So you can connect to everything and just make it work. So what we're going to do is have a quick look at this in an actual live application, and then we'll come back and just run through some of the theory. So I'm going to just flick across at this point to this here. And what we've got running here is a code editor in which we are talking to a number of MCP servers. So we'll just jump in here. We'll have a look at this. Now this, I'll cover this off shortly, but this is called Klein. Klein is an AI agent that runs in your browser, in this IDE. So you can interface with this through a window and ask it questions and give it commands, and it will go and do things for you. I'll take you through what this looks like in a second. What we have through Klein is the ability to set up a number of different servers that you can connect to. So here we've set up a server in which we can connect to Airtable, a calculator, or Gmail. So for those of you that don't know, Gmail, obviously Gmail is sending emails. So by connecting to this, we can actually now, through the command line, we can send emails out to people. Airtable is it's a database, but it's actually more like an Excel spreadsheet. So you've got the ability to connect to your Gmail, and you've got the ability to connect to a bunch of resources online. And what you need to do to make that work is then connect to the MCP server to actually link that up. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So just coming back on this, what we're about to show you is that we're going to connect to, through Model Context Protocol, using Visual Studio and Klein as the interface. We're going to connect up to that and to Airtable, and then we're going to make that do something useful, and then that will sort of show you how all this fits together. So it becomes possible to connect these things up very, very quickly. So what we have in this case in Klein is we've connected to this N8N test node here. Now I'm going to show you the step-by-step instructions to follow along and do this yourselves. But N8N is an automation package. And let's have a quick look at what this looks like. So in N8N, we have set up in here a very simple MCP server. And it's literally 4 bits of code that we've put in here. So we've got, you come up here and you put in MCP server, and you install that. And then you come in here and you add in Gmail, Gmail tool. And then you connect that up to your trigger. And then any tool that you want to add in, you just come in and you select it from these tools which are available. So through N8N, it's possible to get access to a whole lot of tools that you can connect up to a server straight away, and then that's the server we're accessing through the through the interface. Again, I'll come back and cover this, but I just want to show you guys a little bit of this first. So what we've set up in here, if we wanted to, we could add in a range of tools in here. So we've got Gmail, we've got the code tool of some sort, which I'll show you in a sec. We've got Airtable, and if we wanted to, we could add in any of these tools. So we could add in LinkedIn. And once we've got this in there and configured up, we now have access to LinkedIn through the MCP server. And we've literally just done it. We've just sort of hooked it up. We've got to get the credentials right, but other than that, it's kind of good to go. So this N8N is a piece of software that you can run through your browser, and you can get that up and running. And then with N8N, that's accessible through this this front end here. So what I've had to do is come into the server, come into Visual Studio, come in and just do npx N8N, and it will go and run it locally at this point. And at this point here, it's now up and running. So literally, you type in npx N8N into your terminal window in Visual Studio, and you'll get an instance of N8N running. Once you've got N8N running, you can come in and you can set up your MCP server. And once you've got your MCP server set up, you can access that through client. So we'll come back and look at this in this, like the slides that go with this in a second, but I just want to show you how this looks. So the other part that we need to do to connect to this is we need to tell the system what is the actual trigger to run off. So in here you have a test URL. It's this URL here. This is what it's listening for on the other side. So we grab that URL, we come back into our remote server, and then we add it in here. So we put the link to that in, and we put in the name we want to give, and then that's what we get installed in here. So at this point, what you can see that I've got running here is I've got a Gmail running, I've got a calculator, which is what I've programmed up in some code, and I've got Airtable running in there. Now that I've got this, what I can do is open up client over here, and I can say I can start to use these tools. Now, client is it's an AI agent that runs in your browser. So you issue commands and it goes away and executes a whole bunch of them. So I'm going to say to this, I want you to send an email. To send an email to Dave.Bremer. We call it Foundry. Maybe you might have the title and the email. It's purposes. Okay, this now will go away. So I've just typed in my agent in my browser. It's going to go away and look up using the MCP server. It's going to say, is there anything that I've got to that I can use to send something through with? And in this case, actually, I'm just going to stop sharing this, change the sharing so you guys can see the screen better. Okay, so now it's come back and it said, okay, I would like to use the N8N test MCP server. I'm going to use the Gmail function, the send function, and I'm going to send this email here. Right, fantastic. Okay, we've got a test email. Now I hit approve. I need to. You might need to just start some things again. So, it's never. I've got demo if it doesn't have some bugs going through it. Okay. So now we've got our our server over here. We're going to grab this event. We'll come back into here. We'll put in again test. And paste that in. You need to make sure this is listening, which is why it's giving that issue, because it needs to be actually listening. And then we'll come back and retry the connection. And now you'll see that it's come back and it's found all that. So we literally just installed this on here. Now that we've done that, we'll come back and we can give it the command again. So let's just come back to this. Make sure it's running. Give it the same command again. Okay. So now what we should have happen is that it will go away and use the MCP server, which is now running. It will send the email, and let's see how this is working in a second. Okay. You need to use Gmail. So the tools have a particular name that they need to get the name right, and we're just trying to see if it's working. Okay, that's sent. So now if I, through here, I've now sent an email to myself, and that will come through in a second. You'll see it pop up in the window here. So we've just used MCP to send an email to whoever you want to send, and we've created a topic of whatever we want to create it as well. So this is maybe not mind-blowing by itself, but it's when you start to pair all this that it becomes really incredible. So what we're going to do at this point in time is the next step in the process. So we've got this server that now is running, and we've got these the list of all these records here. Now imagine that we say, okay, we've got the ability to send email through typing out stuff. Now we're going to ask the MCP to look up records from this Airtable. So let's have a quick look at Airtable and see what that looks like. And I'll show you. Okay. So we have Airtable set up here where we've put a testing base and we've got some employees of some sort in there. And some of the employees are set to available, some of them are set to not available. And effectively from the editor now, we can look up those records. And then if we want, we can then send emails to those people. So this is how you start to use MCP to add all these functions in that you would normally spend a long time programming up. And then you can just start to sort of leverage off that. So let's have a quick look at what that looks like. And just by the way, in Airtable here, you can see that this is connected up to testing and employees. And it knows that's what it's looking for. We can now get back from our browser. What we can do is using NAN test Airtable tool. Please give me a list of all employees. It's just a list of all employees. Let's start with that. We'll get back a list of everyone that's on that list, and you'll see that that's our list there. So it's gone and looked up the list, and it's come back and it said these are the people that are there. And I'll say, okay, fantastic. Okay, great. Please now send an email to all people who have that status available, asking them to contact HR. Okay, so now we're starting to like link things up in different ways, and we're literally just doing it through the chat interface here at this point. So here we go. So this to Dave and to Barry, who were the people that we had in our table that were partially available. These were the people that were available that we sort of wanted to talk to. Please contact HR at your earliest convenience. They're not the nicest message ever, but that's okay. And we will then send that off. We need to make sure that's running to send it. Okay, so this time it will send it through. So you can see how we've connected up a bunch of different bits and pieces. We've got everything to the point where it's starting to like link it in different ways, and we're doing it through just a chat interface where we're actually able to walk through a bunch of stuff. So I think that's pretty mind-blowing that you can do that like in such a short amount of time. And what I'm going to do now is go back and take you through some of the theory behind this, and also some of the resources that you can follow along to cover off on this. So I'll come back and do that. But do you guys have any questions on the back of what I've just gone through, or you sort of want to jump through and have a look at the theory at this point? I realize
I've got one question, David.
Yeah.
You sent an email through Gmail.
Yeah.
I wonder whether you could actually listen to Gmail emails that are coming through to Gmail and say you want to, take some action. Say, for example, if it comes through from certain people that, you want to do an action.
Yep. You can 100% do that. So in this tool that's set up here, what I've got is I've got it set up to send, but you can give it a tool where it's got get and all these functions. And so the way you set up your server, the tools you give it is what it can then do. The thing is that when you actually instantiate your server, and by that I mean when you install it, it knows the tools that it's got there. So it knows that it's got Gmail and that it's got a send operation in there. It knows that it's got Airtable and it can read data and do that by filtering it through. And it knows it's got a calculator, which I'll show you in a second what it is there. So you install the tools that you want to have happen on here. And once you've installed those tools, you can be specific like I was. Let's say use this tool to go and do this, or you can use it up. You can leave it up to the agent. And if there's a good description in the tool, it helps it to sort of know this is what the tool is for, and I'll go and use the right thing. So you need to get the descriptions right, or you need to be explicit in what you're telling it to do. But you can give it a whole Swiss Army knife of tools, and then say, away you go and do your stuff.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, Adrian.
Hi David. Thanks for doing this. This is amazing. I'm already learning so much. Got two questions. Probably the first one is as I'm looking at this going, I'm thinking we built an app a few years ago using cloud functions where the UI effectively, which is the user end of the app, is just sending stuff off to a whole bunch of cloud functions to run algorithmical sort of functions. I'm seeing this as the same sort of thing. So can we really build a whole kind of application using these, or is this really designed to be more kind of like Zaps, like Zapier type things, where it's like, well, we just do a bunch of things. But whereas I'm looking at this going, actually, I could build this something which is a complex network of these to do a whole range of things, like managing a whole team of allocating tasks, picking the right people to do things, sending the right messages to people, booking in appointments, scheduling events, all that kind of stuff, all in one thing, and to actually take over a whole function, administrative function of a business.
100%. That's what this opens up to be able to do. So this is the beauty of this, and this is where it's like sky's the limit in terms of what you can do. I'm going to show you this N8N, which is what I've put this in here, is really easy graphical tool to get this up and running. But I'll show you guys later in the chat today how to do that through Python as well. So there's ways to kind of have all that as a MCP server that you set up through Python, and then you can make tools available through that. So reusing existing code and serving it up and do this, and then to sort of set these servers up in ways which all of the functions cascade and they kind of do all their stuff together. It's absolutely possible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, let's come back and have a bit of a look at the theory and some of the notes that go with this. This will, again, will help you guys to figure out where to start in all of this. I just need to find the right screen. Okay. So let's have a quick look here. The caption seems to be a bit over glitch. Stop. Okay. So how is before we come into how MCP is structured, let's jump in and have a look at the resources that are now available for you guys to help come through and look at all this stuff. So you will now find on the Product Foundry website, you'll find a link to the various labs that are running. That now takes you through to a community guide page, and you'll see a list of all the events which are coming up there. So that's the best way to get access to all the events. Same page on here, you'll see the community guide, which I'll take you through in a second. A link to Discord to join that. Option to volunteer if you want to help out with all the stuff, and to subscribe to the newsletter. The community guide is the one I want to take you through. And this is where you can sort of find a whole bunch of resources to help you with this stuff. So what you'll find in the guide is an overview. And what we've got in here is some outputs from the live coding sessions. So I'll take these sessions, not all of them, because it's not all of them sort of helpful for educational purposes. But the ones which are, I'll take and put into the live coding outputs, and you'll see some actual code of what's come out in that. Session notes is where you've got the notes that go with the sessions, so the notes you can follow along with. So if you jump into the session notes page for the MCP side of things, you'll see a whole bunch of detail that takes you through the overview of MCP, takes you through the transport mechanisms, all the sort of theory behind it. And in this particular case, the first sort of two is talking around the theory, which we'll jump back and have a look at in a second. From then on, you're into sort of tutorials that will take you through being able to follow along with this. So if we jump into the self-host one, for example, this will take you through step by step what you've got to do to repeat what I just showed you. So we'll run through this. I would ask you guys, if you do have issues following this through, let me know. This is obviously hot off the press. There'll be some bugs in the notes, and feedback would be great. That sort of help us iron those out. But basically, it's very easy to do what I just showed you. So you need to install Node.js. You need to have Visual Studio installed. And then to run N8N, and N8N is, by the way, it's open source, which is why you can just sort of run it. It's code base is all there. When you execute this command, this will download the latest version of it. It takes a little while for it to install, but once it's installed, it's in your local package, and then it fires up straight away. And then you get a version of N8N that runs locally. And at that point, you've got something that runs in your local browser, and you can use it to do all the stuff that you do. You can then also deploy a version to a server if you want to have it working, in a more of a production environment. I recommend starting off running it in a local environment, super easy, and then you're up and running. So just to come back and have a quick look at what that looks like, that was what I did at this point here. So this was where we got, let's get rid of that. This is where we've got our terminal window here, and it's type in Linux and it will go and fire it up, and then it'll give you the link, and then you hit the button, and then once you've open the browser, once you've done that and you've got it installed locally, it actually saves your workflows into an environment that you can, into a folder, so they persist. So even though you close this down and start again, your workflows persist. So that's the guide to get NAN up and running. To get Gmail up and running, I will take you through this because it's, I think email is quite a useful thing to do, and the process of getting this happening for one, the authentication happening for one of these tools will be something which repeats across a whole bunch of other tools. So what you need to do is go to the Google Cloud's console. Now, I personally find Google Cloud to be a bit of a challenge to navigate around, but they sort of do things their own particular way. So this is the Google Cloud's console. Now you can see that I've got a project set up called NAN test. And what I've then got to do is come in here, and in the API and services, I need to set up the credentials. And this is where we need an OAuth 2.0. So at this point, we're going to create a credential. And we'll create a web app, and we'll give it a name, test. And then here we need to add the URI of the server that we're running, so that it knows what to install. So if we go back and look at the one that I ran before, and I'll delete this upwards because you'll see the keys and everything. But here we've got the callback to the local host, which is running there. And we've got this up here. And then we grab this secret and this key, and we put that into the NAN instance. That then looks like, if we just jump back into NAN for a second, that then looks like in here, this is where you grab that callback function from. So you've got to come into NAN, come into, put the Gmail node down there, come in, grab that callback, jump back into the credentials for Google, paste that from NAN into here, paste in localhost up there, grab your client ID, grab your client secret, and then put that back into the authorization here. And then once that's done, it'll turn out green. So you go through that process, and that'll get green. All of those instructions are in the guides here, so you should be able to follow along. But if you can't and you get stuck, jump on Discord and shout out. And if there's issues with the guides, we'll improve those to make them sort of more obvious. Once you've got that running, then obviously on here, where do we go? On here, you need to add your server node up here. The server node has got very little to track through. It's just got this local host mode here. There is a couple of tricks here though. So when you go from, you've got test and production. So when you're testing stuff, the name that you've got in this area here has MCP test in there. When you go to production, that test is gone. And so you need to make sure that when you are crossing your browser, in your IDE, that you bring across the right URL for whatever stage you're in. Generally, development, obviously you're in test, and then at some point you switch to production. So it's just, that's a sort of a gotcha that you can get stuck out on. And what was happening before when it was timing out, it wasn't connecting, was I didn't have the test workflow running. So at this point now it's running and waiting to go. Once I've activated this though, and once I sort of leave it, it's just running, and it will run like until I've tell it to stop. So so hopefully those instructions will kind of get you through that. And then there's a couple of extra tips in there. One of them actually is you'll notice I had to approve every email. Now, if you're bulk sending a whole stack of emails, you don't want to go through and have to approve everything. You want to just be able to say, set it to false, and obviously use it on your own risk. the thing I would do in that case is change the function of the of this from draft to from send to putting together a draft. So again, with these agents, you can do a lot, and you need to be careful to make sure that you don't sort of do stuff that you don't want to do. But yeah, hopefully that'll get you covered. There is pretty detailed instructions in there, and that's the step we just went through of that N8N server node there. So that's kind of how you get to access all that information. We'll come back now and have a look at the theory behind MCP, which will give you a little bit more context as to why all this fits together and why it's kind of so good and how best to go about using this in day-to-day life and in your business. Yeah, feel free to jump onto that community guide and shout out if you find anything which is not looking quite right. Okay, back on the lead up here. Run through this now. So this is the part I wanted to come back to, having shown you that community guide. So now, hopefully through these sessions, you get some familiarity to see what's there. And then you've got the instructions to be able to go and do it. At that point, once you've got the instructions, you can start to work through it and sort of see if you can make it work. Now, to actually get from conscious effort up to proficiency, there's some research that talks around kind of how best that is to how best people are to learn to do all this stuff, particularly in sort of tasks like coding. And the research is pretty clear. So what it says is you're best to practice in groups, which is why this is so great. This is fantastic for me. I learn a lot from this. You're best to learn deliberately, so actually have a bit of a plan to follow through, which hopefully is what the course notes is for. Get feedback, reflect, and apply consistently. So a lot of this is around being able to actually work through it and actually apply it in practice. The community that we're setting up is there to help all these things. So hands-on sessions to give you familiarity. The videos we'll record will hopefully help you show what's there so you can walk through that. The peer support through Discord. So do jump on if you're finding this valuable, do jump on and ask questions, but also help other people out, because it's actually the best way to learn is to help other people, is what I've found. Go through the learning resources. I will be issuing the next kind of step for me in all of this is to give people a sort of a 30-day guide of here's the steps to follow to get up to speed on stuff, so that you've got a kind of a bunch of steps to follow to get to a certain point. We also run some hackathons as well that help people get up to speed, and there's one in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, if you want to really accelerate, feel free to reach out, and I can take you through some personalized guidance around all the stuff, which will help you jump through. So that's the kind of goals in all this, is to accelerate the community, to bring everyone together, to create a great set of resources and provide real practice and kind of a real environment. So these sessions and feedback on these sessions, what works and what doesn't, is really helpful, because it helped me tailor it to what is helpful for you guys as a community. Okay, we're going to come back into the theory, and I've deliberately kind of done this sort of second, because I think it's more useful to have seen it in action first. So the theory is going to show you what this is all about and why. And as always, I jump in with questions as we go. And I think at this point, I might just turn the video back on so you can see me at least a little bit here. This might be helpful. So the thing I'd say is that APIs are and remain the backbone of scalable app development. They allow applications to communicate in a modular fashion. You can draw like a clear distinction around one service and the next. If you're developing anything of any sort of note, you're going to come across APIs. That's just the sort of reality of how these applications are built up. Where is this slide gone? What MCP has done, though, is it's just made it an awful lot easier to use APIs. So as I've just shown you, rather than having to go through and actually build all these up for your own applications, when you've got a third-party service, whether it's Gmail, Brave for internet search, local file search, you can have that run through a Model Context Protocol. Anything which is like a common sort of service, and all of the providers are doing this right now. So LinkedIn, Slack, I saw one from DHL as well, Airtable. They're all creating these Model Context Protocols, which then give you that ability to come back and connect everything up very rapidly. So MCP has been around, it's got the ripe old age of 5 months at this point in time. And when it came out, a lot of people were like, like another framework. It just happened to come at the right time when LLMs have the ability to tailor instructions, and they can take some fairly vague instructions and figure out what needs to be done. So that's kind of the secret sauce that made this really work. But it came out in November 2024, and if you look at the sort of usage charts of MCP, it took off around about March or so. So it started to really grow at that point in time. The way that it's structured is that it's got hosts, which is your applications. So when we looked at the dev environment we were running before, like in IDE, that was the host. We've got the clients that manage direct one-to-one connections between hosts and servers. The servers, which is what we saw us putting together in NAN, is the server. So those tend to be ideally small, purpose-driven programs that offer tools, prompts, or services. And that's quite important. So through MCP, the protocol, it can serve up to the outside world. It can serve up a series of tools. It can serve up a series of prompts, and it can serve up a series of services. Those are the 3 protocols that it allows us to do. The way that this is set up from an architectural point of view is that you have your MCP client that's there that we were using as Visual Studio in our case. We've got the servers, of which you've got 1 or more servers running, and then you've got your that can run on your computer, but it can locally interact to a remote service if it needs to. So MCP, you just add servers as you go, and if we jump back into client over here, we just went and installed our own server on here, which we've got running within our N. If we go into the marketplace, we can see a whole bunch of servers that are ready to install. So I can literally come in, I can install client onto this Visual Studio, and then I've got access to all these things, which is all good to go. Interestingly enough, it's included a lot of stuff, which is kind of what we went and did through NAN. So got Airtable, Discord, you name it, it's all kind of there. And the amount of stuff which is coming there is growing. Where this gets interesting, of course, is that at that point, you've got all of this plumbing that you can put together a whole bunch of services, and then you can start to develop your own servers that do specific things, which are the custom things that are the secret sauce and whatever it is you're trying to do. So that's what we're about to cover off, but that's the kind of the power of it, is that you've got all of this functionality at your fingertips, and the ability then to add in servers that will build that out as needed. So it's pretty cool. There are a couple things to be aware of with MCP. So there's 2 transport mechanisms that run. There's standard I/O. It's super simple to set up. Standard I/O, it doesn't need networking. It works when the client and server are on the same machine. So for development purposes, you set up a server with standard I/O and you're up and running. That's all good. It doesn't scale if you want to deploy it elsewhere. So for that, you need SSE, which is service sent events, and SSE uses HTTP and SSE for client-server communication. Now, it's not hard to set up an SSE server, and we'll show you what it looks like in a second. But an SSE server is suitable for remote and distributed systems. And of course, keep in mind with this, we're talking about deploying a server for a function, but you could deploy the same server multiple times for, for some redundancy as well. So there's abilities to sort of scale this in ways which is quite surprising. SSE is a sort of a nice, well thought through protocol. And this is what it looks like. Okay, so you've got your clients that sit over here, and you've got your SSE server, and it's a unidirectional server. So it opens the connection, okay, and then it just gets back events and it closes the connection. At no point is the communications going back the other way with SSE. It's a one directional service. So this is done from a sort of security point of view. You can of course come back and sort of obviously ask for additional bits of information, but once it's coming through, you're getting that download of information coming through from there. Now, we've speed run through MCP. There is, if you go back into the notes which are available, and let's just jump up and have a look at the notes. My goodness, where we're going. You'll find a little bit of a deeper view into what MCP is all about. And if you want to go into some of the details, it's all there. You can sort of work through it. Okay, so here we go. STDIO is bidirectional. SSE is server to client only. It's a lightweight technology that allows the server to push real-time updates to a client over a single long-lived HTTP connection. So yeah, SSE is what you're looking for when you're going to deploy stuff. Now, we have, in previous sessions, we haven't looked at Client and we haven't looked at RU code, which is 2 bits of kit that's on top of Visual Studio code, which I'm going to go through in a bit of detail now. In order to have something to connect to from an MCP server, we needed to have a way of actually connecting to an agent that could do that. Now, Client and RU code are 2 bits of kit that sort of let you do that. They're autonomous coding agents. So you can install them within Visual Studio, communicate with them in natural language, and they can do a whole bunch of stuff. In future sessions, I'm going to cover both Client and RU code. These are quite massive game changers in terms of being able to do scalable AI coding, because you can actually give them a bunch of tasks and they'll implement. They'll sit there and they'll code for like an hour while you go off and do something else. And provided you've given it clear instructions, you actually get quite good results out of that. RU code in particular is amazing because you can have custom modes in which you can tailor the way in which a particular bit of your code base is developed that's specific to that code base. So it's built around being able to deploy scalable applications. We'll just jump back into Visual Studio for a second, and I'll show you in here what this looks like. So you'll see down the side here that there's a button here for Client, and there's a button here for RU code as well. I haven't played with RU code as much as I have with Client, so I'm gonna stick to that. But what you have in here is a history, so you can go back and look at all the stuff that I did. I can actually load up a history from before, and you can sort of see that earlier today I was running through a bunch of stuff to test it to make sure this worked ahead of the session. Through Client up here, you've got access to the servers, which we've showed you before, and you can open this in the editor. So when you first open this up from within Visual Studio, you click on here and you'll get Client open up on this side. And then if you click on the files rock up and Client vanishes. So what you want to do is click on this so that you can open it in the editor. And then you can go through and select things through here as normal. And at this point, you've got a bunch of settings. Now, you'll notice as well, this is what's particularly cool. Client will tell you the context window that you're using, and the cost of what you've spent to develop this so far. Now, in this point in time, I'm using Gemini 2.5, and I've done that through setting up an open router key. And the nice thing about that is Gemini 2.5 is free at this point in time. So everything that I'm doing at the moment in client is free because it's they haven't started charging for that yet. And that's just amazing. So you can see here that it actually tracks your costs as well. So as I'm coming through it, so this is my context window. Google 2.5, Gemini 2.5 has 1 million token context window. So I'm only up to like, just touching, just starting to sort of use that. Cost is 0 so far. And it's coming through and asking you for a whole bunch of requests to say, please come and do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? What you have in here is the ability to set up the approvals that you want. So do you want it to be able to do all these things? Do you want it to be able to read project files? Do you want it to be able to edit project files? Do you want it to be able to execute safe commands? Do you want it to be able to use the browser? Do you want it to be able to use MCP servers? So all of these things you can say yes or no to. And then you can give it the max number of requests. So you can say to it, I want you to go away and run for up to 100 times. And before you can sort of say, I need to get permission to keep going. So if we look at this, and this is particularly amazing, I think. If we look at this, and let's just open up the new folder here. Okay, so I've got a bunch of code here. And I'm going to say to this, I'm going to bring up client on the side over here. And then I'm going to say to it that I want it to read through the code base and understand it. I actually want it to go through these design dots. So let's just have a look at this. And this is just phenomenal. So here what we're going to say is I would like you to read all the files in design docs, understand the design of this application. Now it's going to go away and it's going to autonomously, because it's an autonomous agent, it's going to go through and read all of those files because I've given it permission to go and do that. At this point in time, I've got some issues with some API requests failing sometimes, but so I might have to click go at some points. But okay, it's going through and saying, I've read the product requirements, I'm reading the architecture guide, I'm reading the database design, I'm reading all this. You can tell it to go through your entire code base and read it and figure out what it's all about. And then you can say, great, now that you know what that code base is about, I want you to then go and do some different things. And then what's particularly cool is you'll notice that it's got this plan and act button down here. So I'm in act mode right now, but what client has just gone and done is it's gone through and read all of these documents, understands my code base. And if I don't want to go and change anything just yet, I can switch back to plan mode and I can say, okay, great. Based on what you have read, what is the next logical thing to do? And it will go away and it will start to make a plan, but it won't execute the plan because it's not changing anything. So what's cool about this, obviously, is that the whole thing we've been talking through the last few sessions is around planning and kind of making sure that you have a plan before you go and do stuff. These tools are set up to enable this, and client is great. RuCode is even better in this regard, and that's why I'll be running this session specifically on RuCode. So it's come back and it said, based on the designs, I think you need to do all these things. Do you want me to start? If so, to switch to toggle mode so I can begin implementing the changes. Okay, in this case, it's just demo purposes, so no, we won't. But what we've got is, that's taken up to 24.2K tokens. and it's used 110,000 tokens going in, out, and 3.4 coming back. It's cost us $0, but we can track all this as the models kind of track through. Because you can set the models that you use, you can obviously then set kind of the functions that you look at doing. So I just wanted to give you this is a real quick demo of this. I'll run a session specifically on taking people through how Client and Roo code work, because they're kind of full sessions by themselves. But it was important that you guys understood that this is an agent which is running, and what we jumped into just now was to give it an MCP server. But you can see how you could have it go and do a whole bunch of stuff using those servers, and you don't have to write any code. You just have to connect things up and give it clear instructions. So I think that's pretty cool. These are available to download from these locations if you want to go look at the source code. To install this in Visual Studio, you just need to come across to here and do Control-Shift-X. You get your list of stuff up there, and then you type that in, and you'll get Roo code come up, and you'll see in this case I've got it installed. But basically you would then click on that and click install, and away you go. Same thing with Client. So very easy to install in Visual Studio. Again, I'll cover this in future sessions in a bit more detail, but the Client Roo code is an instance, a fork of Client. Client is a little bit more slow to move at stuff. Roo Client is, I would say, more developer friendly. It's a little bit more bleeding edge as well. But some of the functions that are coming out in Roo code is pretty cool. So I'll be covering that in future sessions. Okay, so then the other bit of kit, just come back and cover the theory from this session, is N8N. We will be shortly jumping into putting together a Python server, so you guys can see what that's like. And the next time around, we'll actually be looking at Python in a little bit more detail. Sorry, I've just seen a couple of questions there. Oh, someone's been waiting to jump in. Is privacy or is data vacuumed off to the LLM? If you give it access to the Airtable device, if you set it up with access to that, then that's the access rights that you've given it. So the privacy comes around the way in which you configure things. Set of IDEs, can the web app be built using IDEs or the AI agent access to connect to third-party tools? Can web app be built using IDEs or the AI agents? Yeah, you can do that. We'll cover that off now. So that's the next bit. Sorry, Ethan, I just didn't see you were waiting to come online before, so apologies. Okay, so N8N is really good because you can do stuff quickly. It's great for prototyping. I wouldn't personally use it for production type of stuff, although people do. The beauty of it is you can build up some quite sort of complicated workflows fairly quickly, and you can sort of see how it runs through. When you run stuff, one of the things I do like about N8N is when you run things through it. Let's see if we can find if we were to do, it'll show you the nodes that are running, so you actually can sort of see the process as it goes through, and then you can kind of track it through. So the debugging of N8N is easy to do from a dev point of view. It does start to get complex as you build a bunch of stuff up. So low code, high flexibility, self-hosted, as you've just seen, native API supports, data aware. So between nodes of N8N, what gets pushed through is JSON. And you've got a whole lot of different nodes you can put into here, and you can see the JSON that goes between each of the nodes. So it does lend itself to switching to other types of programming further down the track. It's really good for chaining up LLMs and data tools and event-driven automations, particularly in a sort of dev environment. So I'll be running some sessions on N8N in the future, but it's something I would strongly suggest you guys have a look at as a way of getting running, if nothing else, just to get MCP servers up and running. It's a quick and easy way to get that in place. So what we've just covered off today has been getting an IDE up and running. That's Visual Studio Code. You'll find instructions as to how to do that on the community guide. Getting client installed. MCP servers on Rucode is a little bit buggy at the moment, which is why I focus on client, but I'll come back and do it for Rucode as well. We then got NIN running with our MCP server, and then we set up some tools. And we literally did that entire flow from sort of where to go over the course of, a few minutes. So you guys should be able to follow the instructions. If they have issues or you have problems, jump onto Discord, shout out, and we'll fix it up. And then that'll help sort of the people that follow along behind. But yeah, you should be able to get that up and running pretty quick. Okay, now we're going to have a quick look at how to build and debug an MCP server, and then we'll come back and do some theory at the end of this. So what we're about to do now is we're going to jump in and look at saying, okay, we want to build our tools in Python. We want to have an MCP server that runs in Python. And how do we hook that up? We're not going to get the full way through this because that's part of what I'll cover off the next time around, but we'll run through getting it up to a certain point in my end. So jumping back into the community guide, we are now up to the Python SDK implementation. And what you've got here is that you need to install the MCP CLI. There's a couple of things worth pointing out here. I use UV in my setup, and the reason is that it's way faster. You will find in the tools section in here, under foundational, you'll find some guide in terms of how to set up Visual Studio to work well with data. And if you follow this through, you will get to a point where you've kind of got the same setup that I've got. It might not be completely accurate, so again, reach out if there's questions, but following that foundational guide through should get you to a point where you've got a good setup. Under MCP, we then have, we go back to the session notes. What's the code? Okay. So UV pip install, that installs the package, MCP. And then here's some code in here for a simple server that we'll build in a second. The code for the server is in the instructions. I'm also putting in place here a bunch of templates that you can jump in and start to dive in. So the MCP and a template for a data project is in there now. I'll turn the video off again so you guys can see this full screen because we're about to jump back into code. And hopefully that will help. Okay, so the MCP is the library for building servers. MCP CLI provides the command line functions. And if you're familiar with Fast API, Fast MCP is sort of set up in much the same way. The actual code that you need to run to set up a server is pretty minimal. Can you guys see my screen at the moment? Is there code coming up here there? Take that as a yes. Yes, cool. Okay, so there's 33 lines of code here. And we'll run through this code and just show you what this does. So what we've got here is from mcp.server.fastMCP, we import MCP. We're loading up some environmental variables. We create a MCP server called calculator, and we give it a tool. And that tool is to add two numbers together. We'll run this in a second and you'll see the tool, and then we'll come back and add another tool, and you'll see how easy it is to add tools in here. But we've set this up and we've run that tool, and then we are setting the transport mode to standard IO. So that's better suited for local development. And with standard IO, we then run it. If we had set that to SSE, which I haven't actually got running at the moment, so I'm not going to do that today, but I'll come back and do it next time. But if you set it up in SSE, it will run at that host and at the port that you've given it. And this is how you sort of set things up. So the code is pretty simple to get that set up and running. If we have a quick look now at the terminal, what we've got here is a function that we run, MCP dev server. And what that does is it runs a tool that lets you inspect the service. We're going to run that now. Fingers crossed this works, because it was a little bit iffy before, but let's see. Okay, so it started, MCP started this thing called inspector, and I'll show you what that is in a second. And then we can actually jump to this location here, and we can now, this is our inspector that lets us look at the application we just put together. So we're in transport type of STDIO. We're going to connect to that. Fingers crossed this works. Okay, and now we can see that we're connected. If we go back to our terminal window, we can see that it's got a message, and we can see that it's going back and forth the way that it should. And now we can start to look at the tools that we've got. So we can list the tools that are here, and we've got this function add, which is here, which is fantastic. So now we can click on add, and we can test this MCP server out. So let's test 5 and 6 and run the tool and get back 11. So we actually have written an MCP server. We've tested it, and we've seen that it's working. And now if you're like, you know what, I want to go back and actually add in a subtract function as well. We can do that here. So, oops. Subtract. And so we'll save that. And now when we run our server again, we'll get the same sort of message. We come back into here, we connect to it again, and so we come into our tools, and list our tools, and we're and now we've got some traps up there as well. So now if we test some traps, and we've got 13 and 4. Okay, it's not working. What's happened? I don't know. Request under request trend. In theory, that should have just run. Let's go back and test the add function. It's wonder if it was. Yeah, the whole thing has stopped for some reason. Oh, it looks like it's got an error here. Okay, so really error not connected. Okay, let's try that again. And I'm sort of new to this, so I'm not quite sure how to debug it all necessarily, but it looks like okay. No, this is not some issue that I've had before. So I'm still working through the ways in which to debug this a little bit myself. But in general, you can see that the way in which you get this running is that you run the function, you add in your different tools, and as you add the tools in, that's when you start to be able to build up a tool that does a whole bunch of useful stuff. We'll be covering this off in future sessions, and just to give you guys a sneak peek of what's coming up, we'll be looking at integrating MCPs with LLMs, and the goal is to use LLM-driven tools, which is cool. We're looking at deploying them through Docker, and again, the goals of that is to actually make something that you can deploy on a sort of production level, and then we'll be looking at a couple of use cases. Thanks, Felix. Good to have you on board. So through here, you'll see some specific instructions for specific bunch of technologies, in this case, Google Cloud. I haven't fully tested this myself yet, which is why it's going to be done at the next series of events, but it's not, it should be up and running by then. In the README here as well, you'll find a bit of an overview of the MCP stuff. So go through here and have a play around. And as I said, you will find some bugs in going through this because it's not perfect yet. That's the kind of the intent of these sessions, is that we get stuff up early so people can jump in and try it, and then jump into Discord and jump in and sort of help bring the notes together so everyone benefits. Cool. So that's kind of the end of the practical sort of side of things. We'll do a little bit of wrap up now, but the last kind of thing I wanted to make the point of is that APIs don't go away in this world. You still have to develop a whole bunch of applications, and you still have to interface to all of your data in some way. But through MCP, you can make that available in ways which is easier than was previously in place. I do have a session I'm running later to this afternoon, later this evening, on APIs for the crew in Sydney. And that's going to be looking at actually how to develop APIs. APIs do not vanish, because what happens here is that you still need to develop your interface to the model context protocol, but you need to do that in ways which is using sort of existing kind of tech. So the focus becomes more around sort of setting it up here than setting it up with a traditional sort of API, but it's all sort of still the same process. Bunch of notes that we won't go into this time, but just in terms of prompts, some of the previous sessions we ran a series of prompts. Prompts sort of guide stuff. You'll find those prompts now in the session here. So the details of how to set up product manager, solution architect, data architect, API developer, all that kind of stuff. And these prompts, again, have proven to be pretty good. Still, open for suggestions as to how they can be made better. But they're now accessible through the community guide as well. Okay, we won't cover that. Firebase we'll cover off in a future session. I'm going to do a session specifically on Firebase Studio and Client. Again, a session particularly on Client. We will jump in now to where we got to in this session. So we actually got pretty far. We put out a server. We gave it a couple of tools. I didn't really show you the configuration of those tools, but I can kind of jump back in here and show you what this looks like. Let's actually show you the calculator in here. So this tool here, we've got Gmail, which I showed you how to set up. The code tool here was as simple as that: result query A plus query B. And when that tool is run, then you gave it the name of calculator. You need to give it a good description at this point, because that's what MCP uses to figure out what the tool actually does, because otherwise it has no idea what these tools do. So you need to sort of say the name is calculator, the description is it does these things, and then the tool's like, so the AI agent's like, okay, that's the function of the tool. Given that I'm trying to do this task, that's the right tool for me to choose. The trick obviously is that an agent will, it's free to choose the tool that it sort of makes the most use for what it thinks it's trying to do. So a combination of good, clear instructions and descriptions and a good plan is what sort of helps. To set up Airtable in NIN, we literally just came in here, set up a access token, set the resource to access a record. We said to access our testing from the employees, and filter by formula. We said that should be defined by the model. So when we ran our function back on the Visual Studio side, it sort of knew enough to say I need to fill out the filter by formula. I intentionally then made it get a series of records back, like all records. And at that point, it knew the sort of structure of the records, and then it could come back and put a filter in place. So there's a few kind of things to be aware of to make these things work well. But yeah, we got sort of a pretty good way down the path, which was good. Do jump into the community sites. It's starting to really come together now. We've started to get like a little bit of chatter on Discord, which is great. And I would encourage you guys to talk about the challenges you're having, but also jump in and help others as it unfolds. Some people are sort of, everyone's at different levels, but everyone's kind of coming up curve pretty quick as well. So it's a good place to kind of jump in and contribute. If you guys are liking what you look like, what you're seeing in all this, I'm putting together a class where this is going to be a little bit sort of next level of stuff. There is a link on the website. So if you come into here, you'll see that you can jump in, you can join the guide, join the chat Discord, volunteer as well. So we just jump into the volunteering side. This is where you can fill out your stuff and kind of the way in which you want to volunteer. There are a few people sort of starting to come together now, and it's a question of kind of how you might want to help out. But if you want to pre-register for the school, it's not, it's still coming together, but, for a relatively modest price, you'll get access to the next level of instructions that come out of all this stuff. So that's what's coming together next. That will effectively be what you see in the community guide on steroids. Okay, so where are we? So yeah, so jump in there. If you've got any questions, reach out and we'll take you through that sort of detail. The other thing that I want to sort of talk about is the hackathon. Now, the hackathon, which is coming up, is we've got this is really putting this stuff into practice. So this is how you get better at this stuff. Okay, I'll jump on that afterwards. Thank you. This is what you also need to jump through. This is sort of the best way to go about doing this. The hackathon is like an ideal way to do this. This particular site is, I'll just put this link in the chat. You guys can jump into here. What we're looking to do is set up some teams with some goals. So then we're sort of going to facilitate some bits and pieces so people can work through some problems, set up a couple of teams. The hackathon group in Sydney is it's the same hackathon as the one in Auckland. So whilst the numbers are small in Sydney, it's actually the same hackathon as will be run in Auckland, and we're going to have, looks like sort of 20, 25 people or so on there. It'll be good to jump in there and have a look around and see if you want to jump in on that. Again, the whole sort of point of this stuff is that you learn by doing. There'll be a chunk of guidance going through that, so that will sort of help people. And then next Thursday, I think it is, there's an hour session where we'll be taking people through the kind of getting the teams together, giving some people some background on how to participate in those hackathons. And again, setting up the teams, giving people ideas and bringing together the right people so that they've got some good structure to it. Obviously, yes.
The link didn't seem to work in the chat.
The Mirrorboard link?
Yeah, it says, well, for me, it says this content can't be viewed here.
Okay, let me see. I can fix that for you. It's probably a list of permissions issue. Let's then put that in that. Yeah, that should be.
It may be that Zoom is not able to show us.
It
But
might
there's
be
not even
actually.
a URL for us to click on.
Yeah, okay. What I'll do is I'll find a way to get that up on the community guide, but it sounds like there's an issue with that. Are you guys able to access the community guide? Is that would be the question I have, because that's the one that I think is the most useful. That is that URL there. Hopefully that's working. Yeah. Cool. If you are wanting to work with me sort of on the back of this, I obviously run these courses, chunk of training. I do mentorship and develop consulting, and I do project development, bunch of different stuff. So feel free to reach out. And probably the best one is through the product Foundry stuff. I will also try and sort of connect to everyone on LinkedIn as well, so you can jump on to connect me through there. Conversation obviously is said each time, so it doesn't end here. There is the there is the YouTube channel. The videos can be a bit rough sometimes, so it's because they're of this nature, and you never know what's going to happen in a session. Discord, obviously, that I think most people are on, in the community guide. So jump on there. I will hopefully be able to put the session up onto YouTube later today. Volunteering, again, just to say, if you guys want to help out, would love to get help on all this stuff. A lot of work's gone into this, and you know, it's coming together nicely, but it'd be good to kind of get help. If you've enjoyed this, we kind of ran out of time, but if you've got some feedback, it really helps to give good feedback on Meetup, sort of help the people to sort of see if this event is something which is good or not. So if you've enjoyed this, then feel free to jump on and say, you know, put in some feedback. The tech stack as well. I sort of cover this off each time, but what's different now is that on the community guide, you'll actually see under the tooling section a whole bunch of different stuff around the tech stack. So there's kind of an index in place of all of that tech stack there, and then there's details for each of the bits of how to install those and how to get them running. Again, still coming together, but it's a kind of a good start for people to get through. So there's a little bit more meat on the bones of the tech stack stuff now, and this tech stack's going to evolve. Now, one of the questions which comes up is, I've got a different tech stack, and it's like everyone has a slightly different tech stack. This is the stuff that that I'm using, and we'll keep developing new stuff as I go. But obviously, if you've got ideas of bits of tech that you think is better, then reach out. I'm always happy to sort of try stuff. Point for me is to try and get to a point where I've got a tech stack that can be developed with really fast, and I'm familiar with. Obviously, as I do that, I've got different types of tech which is sort of used in different cases. So the way this is kind of laid out is that this primary stuff is what it would be my go-to, and then secondary and tertiary would be kind of what I'd go with down the line. I'd probably now move Visual Studio Code up the list because it's more and more my go-to in this space now. Feel free to reach out with what you guys want in future sessions. So if you're grappling with a problem, if you're like, I've tried to do authentication or I've tried to do payments and it's just not working, let me know. Get some chat going on Discord as well, so to see who else has got those kind of challenges, and that will then help sort of shape future sessions. The whole thing about it being a community session is that it's up to the community to sort of say where this goes. Generally, if you've got a problem though, other people probably have the same thing. So, you know, check in on Discord with others, and based on that, we'll sort of tweak the sessions. That's been a pretty jam-packed session, but that takes us to the end of kind of the time. I'll stick around a little bit for questions for people that have some questions, but normally I'd try and put a bit more time in for questions, but we just had so much to get through today. So thanks guys for your time, and yeah, open up the floor up for questions you guys might have.